One. Hello and welcome to NJ Biz Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Kanige. My guest today is Michael Marin. He's the president of CEO and of Holy Name Medical Center in Teaneck. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. I say welcome back, but we actually haven't spoken in a while. The last time was at the height of the pandemic. Holy Name was at ground zero in Bergen County at that time. You yourself tested positive for COVID at a time when that was a pretty scary thing. I'm curious, though, about since then. Did you take any sort of lasting lessons, or did that experience change the way you do your job, the way your staff does their job? Were there any sort of lasting changes that occurred, or was it just a once-in-a-lifetime experience that you got through and then moved on?
Oh no, we absolutely incorporated a large amount of improvements, changes, not just in facilities and workflows, but critical thinking and how we approach, day in and day out, daily problem solving. There was a silver lining in terms of the improvements and efficiencies that we can make in how we deliver care that came out of COVID.
Okay. I actually have heard that before. A lot of it was technology. Was that your experience too? The adoption of new technologies and getting up to speed very quickly on that sort of thing?
That's right. So technology is absolutely a big part of it, but some of it's just practical stuff that for years we took for granted. So give you an example, every renovation we do now on a patient room, we make sure that there's UV filtration lights in the HVAC systems. Mm-hmm. Every room has negative pressure so that airborne viruses are sucked out before they can contaminate, minimizes exposure. And probably one of the bigger ones, which was a simple thing that one of our ICU nurses suggested at the height of the pandemic to help us save on PPE, is every room should have a pass-through to the outside, a secondary set of medical gases on the outside, and a window into the room so that nurses can stand outside with their IV trees and can stand outside with their monitors and whatnot, and not have to don and doff PPE and put themselves in harm's way if you have an infected patient. So all of our new room designs now incorporate those features.
Right. And those are good things to do for any reason, right?
That's right. That's right. It's good to do on just high infection precautions, right? So, and unfortunately, we're firm believers. I don't think this was a one and done, and it wasn't the 100-year Spanish flu pandemic. In our lifetime, I fear we're going to see it again. And so we want to be ready, much more ready the next time than we were this last go around.
Okay, well, that actually leads to the next thing I wanted to talk about. So some more recent history. A lot of experts I've spoken to and a lot of experts have been publicly critical of what's coming out of Washington, particularly from public health officials in Washington, particularly about vaccines. I'm curious as to the way you assess what's happening in Washington. Does it make your job more difficult if there's a lot more skepticism about vaccines and about medical treatment in general, which again seems to be what we're hearing a lot of?
It's always a challenge. Misinformation in the medical field is at an all-time high. Now, whether it's the source is the government or Google or AI, ChatGPT, people are questioning and trying to self-educate. And what people don't realize is just how much bad information is out there. And so it's one of the things we learned again through the pandemic. In the beginning, we didn't know what was going on. And so you had to take ultra conservative action because of that deficit of knowledge. It was the safest way to protect people. And rather than just coming out and saying, we don't know, because then people, what do you mean you don't know? We sort of created all these things rather than just come and say, look, we don't know. So until we do, we'll figure it out. But until we do know, the safest and best thing is to shut down, take extra precautions, do all these things. We know in hindsight, a lot of that wasn't really necessary, right? It was at the time. Let me put it this way. I'm a firm believer at the time it was absolutely firmly necessary. But we, as we learned, didn't change policy, right? The policy got ingrained, stuck, and that was it. And it wasn't an adaptable, agile, no, wait a minute, more information is coming in now. We realize right? This isn't droplet borne. This is airborne. That changes the whole dynamic.
Right.
There's a whole host of other components of the virus. It's mutating at a much faster rate than we originally thought. All those treatment patterns were changed dramatically, but the virus changed. And so rather than stay at the forefront of credibility saying, look, this is going to move, it's going to change, we know that viruses mutate. We've known that for 100 years. So rather than just talking about it in a logical sense, even the medical community kind of panicked and say, no, keep it locked down, keep this, do that. And I think in hindsight, that miscommunication hurt long-term credibility where people didn't believe and didn't trust anymore. And it makes it easy for the naysayers to sort of pile on and discredit what's happening.
Okay, the reason I asked that, you mentioned that you didn't think this was a once in a 100-year event, that we're likely to see something similar in the future. I asked that question because it sounds like Holy Name and probably many other hospitals, particularly in this part of the country, are ready for another one, or at least as ready as you can be. But I wonder if the rest of the American public, the rest of the people out there are ready for another one and can deal with that if it comes along.
No, definitely not. So there is still a huge disconnect between what is traditionally called the public health sector and the providers, right? Public health sectors are monitors and not hands-on providers. Providers are hospitals and health systems and physicians and nurses who are in it day in and day out. It was one of the points of confusion during the pandemic where all of a sudden public health individuals took on the role of being a provider, and like, that's not your role. You're actually not very good at it. You should let us do that, right? And at the same time, there were a lot of providers who were more than willing to wash their hands and say, hey, great, this is dangerous. You want to be the provider? I'll stay on the sidelines. Right. And that doesn't work. So defining roles, who should do what, I'm a firm believer. Every hospital, especially in New Jersey, the majority of them are nonprofits. We have a responsibility to the community. We should step up when those crises happen, take on that responsibility and take care of your community. It's what we're here for. It's why we exist. And don't abdicate that responsibility to somebody else just because it's convenient.
Okay, very good. Switch gears a little bit, talk about something a little more positive. Back in the summer, Holy Name received a $75 million donation. It was the largest ever for a Catholic hospital, second largest ever in New Jersey. Big number. So the question is, what are you going to do with all that money?
Well, so right now that money is serving as seed capital, even though it's unrestricted. We're keeping it and just using earnings and treating it like an endowment.
Okay.
The benefit is multi-pronged. First and foremost, it was a confidence booster in the staff here that someone felt that strongly about Holy Name and how we do things and what we do that they would give us such a large gift. So that was tremendous. And when I say that, it's the medical staff and the nurses and the techs and everybody right through the entire organization. So that was a wonderful piece of it. The other is to the community, to the people we care for, that all of a sudden they say, wow, I didn't realize someone thinks that highly of Holy Name that they would give them that kind of money. Maybe I should try it. Maybe maybe I missed something. It's better than I thought. And so that community benefit is important. And then the other is hopefully it stimulates other philanthropically inclined individuals to say, wow, I don't have 75 million, but I can make a nice large gift to Holy Name and it can absolutely incentivize others. And we've already seen that. So there's been numerous other people in the community who have stepped up and made, significant gifts as a result of the confidence that large gift gave, right? People want to give when they know that someone's going to be around and they want to give to winners. And that set all those fields in motion. And we hope that we'll continue to do that for a long time.
Okay, very good. I was asking that because I don't have to tell you, there's a lot of challenges in facing your industry these days. I've heard the litany myself, starting with difficulty in recruiting and retaining skilled professionals, nurses and physicians in particular. Does this kind of gift help you do that? If not, how are you dealing with those kinds of things? But let's start with that. I mean, there are others, but let's start with that issue in particular.
So it can. So the gift can help because it's unrestricted. And again, if we needed to, we would use it to endow chairs in our new graduate medical education program
Sure.
and help offset the cost of the residents that are coming in. So there is some direct wage and salary benefit. The workforce challenges are real. The really above market escalation in terms of compensation across the board for the workforce is unprecedented. In my 40 years in New Jersey doing this, 38 years at Holy Name, I've never seen this kind of wage and salary pressure. It's just unprecedented. And the problem for us is we don't get to set our prices. We don't get, so pricing's fixed, whether it comes from the government or it comes from the commercial payers. And if you're giving out raises because your competitors are, or the market's demanding it, and the financial side isn't giving you the same kind of adjustments, margins deteriorate real fast. They're razor thin to begin with. The other challenge in that is productivity. There's a generation of physicians and nurses who are retiring that had a totally different work ethic than the newer generation that's coming in. And it's one of the bigger challenges. It's a job or functions that one person used to be able to do or handle now need to be split between two and sometimes three people.
Oh, really?
Because the work ethic's just not the same.
It's the work. It's the ethic rather than training or education or lack of skills.
Yeah, no, it's actually it's time, right? Some of that it takes time, and it takes a willingness to say, I'm going to take full responsibility for this, right? So as we get very granular in defining roles and jobs, and you do this and you don't do that, but you can do that. And if you do that, you're going to save time. And this patient, this client is going to be a lot happier. People don't think that in the older generation, that was like, no, I do whatever it takes. I want to take care of the person. I know I can do this. I'll do it. Let's just get it done. Time is an important factor. That doesn't seem to, time works in a different way with this newer generation. It's balance of life, which is not a bad thing. I'm a big proponent of that. But while you're here working smarter, working efficiently, going that extra mile, that's important. And we're kind of losing that in the younger generation.
Okay. All of that, I think, sort of doesn't bode well for another issue, which is affordability. I mean, that was a huge issue in the gubernatorial campaign we just went through here in New Jersey. Rising costs. It sounds like there isn't really much relief on the horizon for that, is there?
No, there isn't. The whole financial mechanism, as you know, my background is finance, and the whole financial mechanism, not just in New Jersey, across the country, is more broken today than it's ever been. And what it allows is for cherry picking of niche services where you can make out well because of the brokenness of the system. But ultimately, the employers suffer, because they're paying the bill a big chunk of the time, and the patients suffer because they're paying the bill. And that becomes a big problem.
Okay. Can technology play a part in any of these things? Because I've talked to some of your peers, particularly with the advent of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of time saving that can go on with technology. Are you finding that, or is it just too difficult to sort of synthesize all that and get it working the way it should be? All the guardrails and everything else that's necessary to protect patient privacy and retain the human touch and all those kinds of things.
Well, so yes, no. As you also know, Holy Name is the last hospital in the country that still develops and writes its own software. Everybody has stopped doing that years ago. We've continued on. We're big proponents of that. So I do think there is a major role in technology adding to efficiencies. I think AI absolutely has an accelerated component to it that's going to help bring those realities sooner. But with that comes great danger because we're moving so fast and people don't understand it. If AI isn't properly trained, if the technology isn't properly tuned, you're going to get wrong answers, and ultimately somebody's going to get hurt. And so in the pursuit of that efficiency, and in the pursuit of the banner of saying we're the most technologically advanced, great errors can also occur. And so it absolutely warrants a high dose of caution. Proceed. It's the right direction, but you need to proceed with caution. And I fear too many people just don't understand how it works. And so there are going to be errors that are made.
Okay. Um, you mentioned that you write your own software. You are, in fact, an independent facility. I'm curious as to whether that's tenable in the long term. Do you feel like you can remain independent, given that there's been so much consolidation, and that's not the trend. That hasn't been the trend in recent years.
Has not been the trend. Has not been the trend at all, not just in New Jersey, but across the
Right.
country.
Mhm.
So I think the same. It warrants a dissecting down as to why that happened, and really, it all happened after payment systems changed, and it came down to health systems having to negotiate with payers.
Right.
And the health system that had the largest market share or had the largest clout held the most leverage in those negotiations. And so systems were formed not for coordination of care, not for efficiencies and economies of scale. They were formed to create market clout to negotiate higher and better rates out of the payers.
Which is
That's it.
something the federal government encouraged. I mean, that was part of the whole. That was by design.
And that's what we're suffering with. It's not efficient by any stretch of the imagination. And so that just drove costs up. Quality didn't, in many markets, quality actually declined because decision making became decentralized and slow. There was a disconnect from your community, which is why every one of these organizations, healthcare is local, and people want to, it's very different. And you have to understand that you lose that when you get too large, and especially in the multi-state systems where everything is centralized in some remote corporate office, the disconnect is just far too great.
Okay. So, in other words, you can stay. You're planning to stay independent, and that's the
Well,
way
I
it's going
think
to be.
here's the trick. I'm a firm believer that at some point, and we've been dabbling with this,
Okay.
the pricing mechanism in healthcare has to change.
Okay.
It is the most asinine system that's ever evolved, and it just within in the last 20 years in New Jersey since the mid 90s is when everything really sort of pivoted and changed. So if the pricing mechanism and methodology becomes consistent and becomes logical and understandable and transferable from organization A to B, and we're all on the same metrics, then an independent hospital like Holy Name is going to thrive.
Okay.
The other is the rise in consumerism. So the combination of the two, consumers are becoming smarter, and the drive to understand and learn more are going to be paramount. And so a patient-centric, high-service niche organization like Holy Name can actually do very well when you're affordably priced in a consistent pricing methodology, which doesn't exist today. It's a black hole, and it's one of the frustrating parts that the consumer has. I can't understand how prices work, and I can't even predict when someone asks ahead of time, because especially on medical conditions, because you don't know the full realm of what's going to happen diagnostically and therapeutically, because you got to figure it out.
Right. Right. I guarantee you're not going to get an argument from anybody who pays doctor bills or anything like that. But I guess the question is then, it sounds like there's really nothing an individual institution like Holy Name can do. This has to be something systemic. Yes, you have to the whole. It's what I hear you saying is that everybody has to change. Everybody has to get on the same page.
Right. Well, I think ultimately they will. I think the pressure from consumers, the pressure from employers who are just saying enough is enough. We cannot continue to pay these escalating costs. It doesn't make any sense, and no one can justify it. That's going to tilt the scale, right?
Okay.
So that's a big plus. The other benefit that Holy Name has, being independent, is we're extremely agile. We can make rapid decisions, and that helps a lot in moving to help the community move forward. And it forces us to be extremely innovative, right? We're not innovative because it's a cool thing and we have some large fund on the side and we like to just sort of dabble in R&D and see what happens. We have to innovate to survive. It's the only way. And so that necessity makes it essential for us to stay that way.
Okay. All right. So we mentioned workforce issues, rising costs, technology. a couple of other things. Are those the biggest challenges that you have right now? Those things, or is there something else that we haven't talked about? What really keeps you awake at night?
No, I think, well, obviously the workforce is number one. I'm very concerned. It's why we started a graduate medical education program.
Okay.
There is a huge shortage of physicians coming. It's here. It's just, but it's only going to get exacerbated and worse over the next decade. And we really need to, especially in New Jersey, because New Jersey has a good training ground between all the teaching hospitals that are
Sure.
here and the 5 medical schools. But most of those graduates leave the state.
Mhm.
And they're not staying in New Jersey because the cost of living is too high and the incomes have normalized across
Right.
the country. And so I can get paid the same and go down south or Midwest, and cost of living is significantly less. They go.
Right.
And so that retention is a big issue. So we got to train, we got to retain, we got to get more nurses, more doctors, more advanced practice nurses and PAs into the technologists, right? So nuclear techs and radiology techs, those specialized technicians are also becoming in short supply. It's going to hurt the ultimate delivery of care. That's number one. Two is the financial pressure.
Right.
And again, having to maintain good relationships with the payers, which is how we get paid, maintaining a good pipeline of quality medical staff who want to practice here. Those are the key ingredients to our long-term success. And if we do those, we'll be around independent for another 100 years.
Okay. Well, that's that. I was going to then ask you about the prospects going forward for Holy Name and for the industry in general. How do you feel about that? I mean, these sound like really difficult things. Some of them Holy Name can do something about. You mentioned graduate medical education. Some things you can't. What is it going to take to sort of survive and thrive in the future?
Well, I think some of it is there's slow moving forces even on the national level. So when the Affordable Care Act was adopted, its intention was never to be a one and done, and it wasn't a roadmap for a long term. It was a roadmap for a short term. Let's understand the market. Let's understand, will individuals go to healthcare.gov and sign up and buy health insurance?
Right.
That concept was never done before. There was no individual market for a consumer to go and say, I don't want to buy my health insurance from my employer. I'm self-employed. I'm in a small business. What market can I go to actively price and get competitive pricing? So it was a test. And I think it proved that, yeah, it can. And people absolutely will go to that market. The problem is the market, it's just very much like COVID. The market's got to adapt to what it learned from those tests. Problem, the designers who started it aren't in office anymore. They're gone. The reins turn and it becomes very inconsistent. And so we stall for long decades of time when it could have moved faster and should have moved faster. I still think it's going to gain momentum because like I said, the biggest force is going to be employers just reaching a breaking point saying we cannot afford this anymore. It's making our products way too expensive, or our services.
Yeah, I think there's a growing realization that that's the case. Given everything that we've talked about, then we're speaking in January. We have 11 months of the year left to go. What are your priorities? Is there something that in particular that you're working on? What should we be watching for from Holy Name in the year to come?
So our priorities at the moment are graduate medical education. We're the newest program in decades in New Jersey in terms of independent ACGME certified on our own. It's not an extension of an existing program. That happens all the time. This was an independent filing startup of a new program. And so getting that residency up and running, the first batch of residents arrived last July, the second coming, the match is in March, and then the second batch will show up in this coming July. So growing that is number one. Dealing with the workforce challenges, number two. And advancing our own technology. So we have some interesting developments here in what started as a revamp of what we thought was a modern electronic medical record because of AI and its acceleration, because we're embedding AI, not wrapping it around, and systems operate very, very differently when you do that. It's really become more of an operating system. It's
Okay.
how do you, and it's a care coordination system, not a billing system. Holy Name's legacy system and every system that's on the market today in healthcare, its genesis, its origin was as a billing system. That's what they do. How do I drop a bill? And when clinical information was needed for a bill, we wrapped clinical information around the bill. The system we've designed, and it's in its infancy, is not that. It's care coordination. How do I communicate? How do I share information? How do I get results back quicker? How do I know what resources are available? How can I make an appointment just simply by 1-2 clicks on a not 10 phone calls, right? Streamlining those workflows. That's what our new and so we call it a healthcare operating system, not an EMR.
Okay, well, that's a good place to leave it. A little bit of optimistic note. I hope you come back and tell us a little bit more about how things are going later on.
I would love to. Thank you for having me, Jeff.
Great.
I really appreciate it.
Mike Marin, President and CEO of Holy Name Medical Center, Teaneck. Thanks very much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.